Welcome to 5 Minutes in the Word, a daily devotional in the Word of God.
Derek, of course, Israel had Saul
Right.
as a king. Unfortunately, despite the fact that he looked very kingly and he started out very humble,
He did.
he didn't end up quite that way.
No.
He kind of took things into his own hands and it cost him. So then God found a man after his own heart, wasn't the kind of guy apparently that looked like a king, at least judging by Samuel's reaction
Right.
to it. But he makes a great king. Makes mistakes, sure, but because he's a man after God's heart, he straightens them out.
He does.
Then along comes Solomon, and Solomon starts so well.
Absolutely.
Praying for, asking for wisdom, and then God blessing him with so many things. So, what happens after Solomon?
Well, after Solomon, you have Rehoboam. Now, Rehoboam is, just like his father and just like many other kings, he doesn't really start out that bad. I mean, he really has some wise decisions he makes at first. Let's look at it. Let's turn to 1 Kings chapter 12. So this is following the death of Solomon in chapter 11 and verse 43, and it says, "And Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his place." So it says Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. And as soon as Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of it, for he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon, then Jeroboam returned from Egypt, and they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and said to Rehoboam. So here, the people of Israel, they're going to come to Rehoboam, and they're going to make a specific request towards their king. And so this is what they say to him in verse 4. "Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke on us, and we will serve you." And he said to them, "Go away for 3 days, then come again to me." So the people went away. So this is what we're talking about before when we said Rehoboam, he made some pretty good decisions at first. He took the time to listen to the people, to hear what they had to say, and to take time to really think about what he should do. So let's kind of see what he does here. Starting in verse 6, it says, "Then King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men who had stood before Solomon his father while he was yet alive, saying, 'How do you advise me to answer this people?'" So you see here, he goes and he talks to the old wise men. This is something that a lot of young people struggle with, going to people that are older, asking them for advice. But Rehoboam, he sees this wisdom in this, so he goes to the older wise men, he talks to them, and this is how they reply to him. They said to him, "If you will be a servant to this people today and serve them and speak good words to them when you answer them, then they will be your servants forever." So he's really saying something that really you see in the life of Jesus. He's talking about service. Right. And those that want to be great actually are the people that are willing to serve. And that's what these wise men are trying to tell Rehoboam. But in verse 8, you're starting to see what Rehoboam is really thinking in his own mind and in his heart. And it says, "He abandoned the counsel that the old man gave him and took counsel with the young men who he had grown up with him and stood before him. And he said to them, 'What do you advise that we will answer this people who have said to me, lighten the yoke that your father put upon us?' And the young men who had grown up with him said, 'Thus shall you speak to the people who said to you, your father made our yoke heavy, but you lightened it for us. Thus you shall say to them, my little finger is thicker than my father's thighs. And now, whereas my father laid on you a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions.' So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day, as the king said, 'Come to me the third day.' And the king answered the people harshly and forsaking the counsel that the old men had given." So here he is, and he speaks to them as the young men had advised him. And, he doesn't listen to that wise counsel. We're going to skip on down to verse 15. "So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of affairs brought about by the Lord, that he might fulfill his word, which the Lord spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam, the son of Nebat." So here we see Rehoboam in his life and in the beginning of his reign as king. He starts out showing a little bit of wisdom, but what he turns into is someone that is so caught up into these new ways, this change, into this young wisdom, that he fails to be a true servant to his people. And that's really a kind of a sad testament to the life of Rehoboam.
Yeah, it really is. We need to learn ourselves. And the number one thing you said was listen. Of course, listen to God, but then listen to the people. Find out what they're really saying, and then act.